So I'm going to turn on the recorder. And okay, so let me pull up my little kind of guide for this. So I'll start with doing kind of a opener that I might also, just so you know, when the final cut of this goes, like, I'm going to try to edit together like kind of like a 1.5 minute type of video to just be like a little teaser. And then I would probably have an edited version of like the full story, the full interview on the same page. And then I'll do a write-up of the story. And so depending on like quality of images and things like that, sometimes I overlay images, right? So like when I'm introducing myself, I may show this image, or I may show an image of like a still shot or something like that. But what I'm going to do is just kind of do a little bit of an opener, and then I'm going to stop my video to make sure that your video is the one that is always showing up.
Sure.
And I'll just kind of do it like an interview and kind of go through the questions, but it can be also free form, because I can ask a question and always edit that out and just string together your answers. Make sense?
Sounds great.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Colin, for joining me today. I'm really excited that you're willing to share a story of how you've overcome objections to sustainability. I'm sure in your role currently, as well as other work that you may have done in the past, you probably recognize some of these objections and excuses, or sometimes they seem like just straight up cop-outs. But whatever it is, it's the reality of what we have to overcome if we want to push our work forward. So I'm really glad to hear about the inspiration of your story. So if you would start and just tell us, who you are and what your current position is, and then kind of going into the story, what's the context and background of the story you'd like to share?
Certainly, yeah. Thanks for having me on. So my name is Colin Tompkinsberg, and I work for a company called Food Maven in Denver, Colorado. I do strategic business development at Food Maven, and Food Maven is a food distributor with warehouses in Colorado Springs, Denver, and now also Dallas as well. We distribute food, meaning that we have warehouses, we have trucks, we have drivers, and so we are a logistics company. But very unlike most other food distributors or broadliners that you may have heard of, such as US Foods or Shamrock, at Food Maven, we have our whole goal is to ensure that all food is used with good purpose. And what that means to us is that we can utilize as much food in the supply chain and ensure that it is going to feed humans, and if not humans, that it is going to feed other animals or compost and never to the landfill. And so what that looks like for us is we focus on food that is oversupply at the farmer level, out of spec, which could be a variety of reasons, from the packaging, the date, the color, the label, you name it, being off on that product. And then also we have a strong focus on local, just to ensure that we're increasing the amount of products that are grown locally, that are actually consumed locally, and that we can just offer the best logistics to local ranchers as well as growers alike. And so that's a little context of our company. Kind of customers that we work with are typically at restaurants, in hospitality. We also do some work with universities and other schools, K through 12, even grocery. But primarily, we're looking to bring this food to chefs and who are cooking in food service. And so a chef, an executive chef, is a very typical buyer for our products. So they're the people that we interface with the most directly. And so in really explaining our concept to a chef, we are met always with, different reactions and questions. But certainly a few of the reactions that we get the most, and definitely varies by different industry and where the chef has cooked before. But when explaining our model and that we focus on food that is oversupply, out of spec, we get a reaction from a chef quite typically that, we've always bought food from a normal food distributor where they just carry the normal products and it's always consistent. And so That is, so kind of this, we've always done it this way before. You're someone that's completely new to the space. You're doing things differently. I don't understand why I want to work with you. And that consistency part is definitely been one of our big hurdles to overcome, because by the nature of focusing on oversupply and out of spec, uh, our products change quite frequently. We typically have a really good representation across different proteins, produce, and dairy, but the specific products that we're going to have in each of those categories can change quite frequently. And that is a bit like trying to stick a round peg into a square when
Right.
it comes to dealing with chefs. And so that is certainly that is just one of the initial kind of hurdles that we have to overcome and educate about when speaking with chefs.
It sounds a little bit like the excuse that I call it in the course is it's against our policy. And there's some layers underneath that. And sometimes policy, quote unquote, is an unwritten rule. And it sounds like you're going up against some unwritten rules that you always have to buy the same thing in the same consistency. And you're trying to really break the paradigm of how chefs think about their ingredients. What
Yeah,
are
no,
some of the things that you say to them to get them to think differently? What kind of triggers an aha moment for them?
so that, I mean, that is very true. And in regards to policy being by the government or your own personal policy or your company policy, and so some of the ways that we try to work around that is a lot of the products that we have are typically a great discount due to their nature, and so can range anywhere from about 30 up to even 50% off what a chef would find for a similar product. And so basically just try to focus on and speaking with the chef on any menus that may be changing. So if they have any part of their menu, like their special of the day, or if they have appetizers that change, or anything of the likes, or if they do any catering out of their restaurant, really trying to just highlight and bring that part of their operation to the conversation to see and show how you actually are changing a portion of your business and the ingredients that you use to some frequency. And so, where you want to make a great environmental impact as well as reduce your food costs, that's, where we can really come in and help you out with.
Excellent. And I would imagine that there are some ripple effects that come from that. So once you get them to understand the benefits to them from an economic standpoint, then the social and environmental benefits also come into play and probably help seal the deal, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And everyone's different. Some people are drawn in immediately by the environmental or the social benefit, but certainly there's been in our cases by people who are just more drawn into they're running a business and it's always a goal, a necessity to keep food costs quite low for a lot of these chefs. And so once they can imagine themselves and start working with us just on lowering their costs of food, then they also see in our monthly impact reports, which demonstrate to them how many pounds of food they've saved from going to landfill, what that equivalent is of CO2, and then also part of our model is working with local food banks, soup kitchens, and the likes, and donating surplus food. And so basically, what their impact is as a business on that part of our work as well.
So I'm curious, how big of a role does that information play in changing hearts and minds? So you talked about a variety of different data points. How impactful is that once you can show people sort of in black and white? That's something I advocate for. You need to take the metrics, you need to have these things that you can show. What impact has that had?
It's been really interesting to see play out. For chefs, it is rarely, I will say, to their own individual interest alone. That is really what gets them intrigued and seeing those numbers and data. Where it really comes to be a more interest for the chef as well as a whole organization is when the other employees of that organization, so of a restaurant and other employees, take interest or they ask for or like seeing those metrics posted on a monthly basis, that gets them inspired or that gets them feeling stronger and better about working at that organization. And then kind of the third tier beyond that would be when the actual customer, let that be a patron at a restaurant, or also what we've seen a lot at universities, where students who are very interested in, how their impact and who they support is either helping or kind of hurting the environment and also their community. So when they have people, either their employees or their customers that they know care about, that definitely starts to drive that home a lot.
Excellent. So just sort of a side question, I'll edit this out, but do you have any examples of like sort of anonymized reports or graphs or something that you would want me to, that, I could kind of do a screenshot of over the video?
Yeah, definitely. There's just our kind of our monthly impact report, or I could just send it to you for a year
Perfect.
or
Yeah.
2000, what Food Maven did. That would definitely gain some insights to expanding on what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. I'll definitely include visuals are good. It's good to have some overlay of visuals to keep it interesting for people. Well,
Definitely.
that's really helpful. I really like that your story addresses the concept of consistency, and it actually touches on so many things that I think that sustainability forces people to just think differently about how they operate, what their policies are, things like that. So just to now kind of off the record to say, I think that that's a really great story. And I really kind of love putting that under the category of it's against our policy. The story I usually tell the most under the it's against our policy is how hospitality organizations don't donate food because they think they can get
Totally.
sued, right? The
Totally.
Belarus and Good Samaritan Act
Yep.
is a really good one. But I like showing how the mentality of taking preferences and turning them into policy in people's mind, or sometimes they really do, there really are policies, right? There really
Totally.
is a written document somewhere that says an apple must look like this, right?
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
so I really, I think that I think your story is really great. I don't know if that was the one you were intending, but I see that very much
Yeah.
as a great story for it's against our policy.
No, definitely. I think there's one part I could add about regarding the same story and the same against the policy, talking about the notion of not serving old food.
Hmm.
Um, and basically, that is also another um, barrier that we come up again when pitching and talking with people at our company is a chef may just tell you straight up, I'm not interested in this. I don't serve any old food. I want the freshest, the best, the highest quality type of food. And totally fair, obviously, that's how most people do it. But in talking about food and being old, the notion of old is not consistent and not shared across the same categories of food across states and across, there's no federal regulation to actually designate any consistent use of even the best by date or use by date, and when that date might be, that's all set by the actual manufacturer or by the farmer, by the grower. And so it's just a much more fluid conversation than black and white being, is it past some arbitrary date or is it before some arbitrary date? And it's really more about, is this food tasty? Is it nutritious? And does it work for the meal that I want to serve someone? And so that's definitely a constant conversation we're having with people, and just exploring what it means to be old and what these dates are, and what is it that you're actually looking for when you want like new food, because typically it matches the food that we have exactly. It's just a misunderstanding for the most part.
That is very fascinating because I think about the concept of beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, right?
Totally.
And like you say, old is a relative term. And I love that. It's also probably true that for so much of the fresh food in our supply chain, we really don't know the exact age. Right?
Yeah.
Like how old is a blueberry? Is it from the moment that it was picked off the vine? Well, yes.
Right.
I mean, right?
Right.
It's like or the off the bush. Sorry. It's very interesting, this concept. And something else that this makes me think of when I do training on food waste reduction, and I show this one slide that shows ugly fruits and vegetables, they're deformed looking. And I always like to say that, like people, vegetables and fruit have their beauties on the inside. They need to be valued for their nutritional value, not their external appearance. So it's kind of a
Totally
fun
agree.
way to get people to think about, that concept, like, oh, that's true. I want to be valued for who I am on the inside, not necessarily
Right.
my skin or my exterior. And so fruits and vegetables are the same thing. Like people, they want to be valued for their nutritional value. So I
Yeah.
love that. That's actually a really great addition. I love that you brought that up. Because who defines what old means, and that we need to, you have to really be able to have a different kind of conversation. So that's great. I look forward to including that, and I'll
Awesome.
maybe overlay a little of the beauties in the eyes of the beholder, and you know
Definitely.
that kind of stuff over that part of the interview. So I love it. So glad you added that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. So do you want to tell the other story?
The other story, honestly, I was going to talk about policy and like
Oh, same kind of
restaurants,
thing.
hotels, can't throw out the food, can't donate the food. So it sounds like you have a lot of that content. It would be good to
Yeah,
see
I do.
more important that. Yeah.
Yep,
So
yep, exactly.
I
No,
think that
that's a good
that
one.
first one covers it.
Good. I love it. I love it. Thank you. Okay. Well, so I'm going to just